Level 9.
땅에서 고추라 진짜 시간.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. It's 8 o'clock. Nghe con là tí một chút chị.
응,
Um,
Yeah, the text.
just so you know the text we're in, it's a Lamrim Chimmo by Tsewang Kappa, which is one of the sort of founders of this lineage. And it's a path it's a text that's sort of a summary of the path to enlightenment. And we are in the section on the six perfections. And we did the perfection of generosity last time, and so we're going to talk about the perfection of ethical discipline this time. Do you have any background in Buddhism? Did that make any sense to you?
Vague, really vague.
Vague, okay.
Resonates
It's okay.
anywhere.
So we'll be talking about ethical discipline this time. And it's a perfection in the sense of it's sort of taken as a practice to sort of help you achieve Buddhahood.
Yeah.
Where is it? It used to be right there.
位置上面这边
So we have a
Last-
book.
But yeah, there were some books. There's an English book. Wait, I think that Jennifer's trying to find it for you.
Yeah, I remember.
Yes,
was
Yeah.
oh this oh yes yes
응.
oh this one.
And the page number in English is going to be page 151 in the English text. The training of the perfection of ethical discipline. Okay.
오늘 가성에만 가서 단다 짐바디시래. 짐바디 디스 기반다시. 시서네 따테리 짐바테나네 두디치시야이스. 두디치.
So last time we talked about generosity, and we talked about it in some detail. So at the beginning of this class, I'm just going to summarize what we talked about last time, this perfection of generosity.
네, 가서 짐바텔라타 디세드마소나 사운드라부치나. ane suzulo penjoto ane ta jemba chushiagi jemba kare yona tindi ngupu ngusun toa yobagi chilolo jemba toa sheda ane tele jemba ane sangi jemba zena ta suzu samlo to ne yo chala to soma to ane la to jela ane samlo to jemba ane jemba iba ane zamdo tene ta jela suzu tanga Kekume jimba tome sanene saldu tomogwa tena suzugume jimba tetene gemu shawa ane kecha nyimbu sha ane liki kujacha ti tsoma ane jimba kundu gare ta jimba disa sound disa sound
So if we talk about it, generosity, of course, there's different ways to divide it. But if we talk about it in terms of there being three groupings of generosity, right? What you can do is you can give things sort of in real life. You can give material things, or you can give the Dharma. You also can practice generosity in your mind, sort of through visualization and aspiration. And metta, well, it's generosity, so it's giving. Metta, I think, is more like, I don't know for sure, but is that more like compassion? So this is actually the practice of generosity.
ane jelan zamdo ta gemusha ane ligi namja yapu ta gejacha la sopa jen jemba kundu
So we also can talk about the generosity of like sort of help making people happy through conversation or pleasant speech or like making jokes and these kinds of things, like helping sort of people that way. Just roughly speaking, breaking the generosity into groups of the three.
ane pena ta suru kombano chibude ane samlo to gonda ja ane chalogo ngopu to penjo to ta somane suzuku diwala sopa soma jen pa ngui sanane samlo to ne jemba to tindele yo mombu kansona ne jema suzola penjo to ne jen la ropa chag ni bar suyona ta sa kanga me pa ngone jen jemba to ne tindi chag
So, for example, we can think about, right, if you just sit in your house and you meditate, but you're meditating over and over again on this practice of generosity, imagining giving gifts and these things, and doing this sort of mental practice of generosity just in your mind, then later, if you actually have if you have the opportunity or the resources to practice actual generosity, then it will come very easily for you because you've developed that habit for generosity.
네, 페나타 랑과도 미무시바 도마시바 카르테나 티솔라네 게문다샤 산진다제 남자 야부테 다테서 요 짐바고 이제라 아니 상로 좋아지야 되서
Yeah,
야부요레스
definitely. So also you can think about, right, if you're just walking down the street and you see people you know or even you don't know, if you're just if you say hi and you smile and you're friendly and you're giving in that way, that also is something that's very good and can be considered generosity, sharing that kind of happiness.
아니 다 짐바고도 다 텐디치기
Mm.
지도바 예스
So just a real brief sort of wrap up summary of what we talked about last time.
근데 가서 다토함도 그 짐바고도 좋아요나 단다 되는 데
Yeah.
가서
So, yeah, so also if anybody online, if you guys have any questions related to generosity from last time, now is a good time to ask them. Or of course you guys.
Humble, we should practice online training.
당보라 나서 디 짐바 냠난 체나 디 공, 디 심기나가 냠아 체거리베. 디 방금 믹세
데
유레베.
보러요 말았어
음.
짐바 그래서 단다 벤조 메시지 아니 치고 잘라서 배하면은 아니 수수날 치고 배하면도 사는
디
상자와도 강가 되고 말아
방금 디 기분
수수 추다더니 수수 그 상고는 짐바 페이 자는 틴디 사울로 또나 네 되게 상로 여진 좋아하더니 삼바자 신고차 그래서 펜토요레스 텔라 테네 아니 지마 케스 소수 벤조요 사토제나 짐바 로바체 턴 틴디 차토나니 네 라봉 차 테네스
It's not so much that there's an order, it's more like you do it first in the mind, and then it's more like if you don't have resources to practice, don't think, oh, I can't practice generosity, right? You can practice generosity in your practice, right? In your mental practice. And then later, if you are in the position, either in this life or another life, right, where you do have resources, and then you can practice generosity with physical things or whatever externally. But it's not like there's an order. It's just that generosity is not limited to actually, if you don't have resources, you can still practice generosity in your mind. Right? That was the distinction. But then when you have resources, if you've done that, then it becomes easy to give, to practice generosity.
네 티던데는 존자나 루지 도디시시아요
Mm.
내가 단다 다자 존 루지 다자 톰바 제제 because 아니 겨부지가 아니 다자 톰바 다자 톰바 코토 치바 로바냐는 모베라 코솔라네 소니 단다 질라 페레스 칼라트레스
So just a quick story to illustrate this. A long time ago, when the Buddha Shakyamuni was alive, there was a king that came to the Buddha and his retinue and was going to offer food.
네 칼라페 텐디체테네 단다 겨부
No, kongti kalati shilati kari.
젠 깨통 네 데랭아 겨부데게네 다자 톰바도 다서 몽보요라 다 고소야 깨통 코르스 콤발레 깨통네 데리 님네공아 깨통 칼라페게 예전
Okay, so yeah, so the king invited the Buddha and all of his sort of retinue to come, and he was going to offer them food.
네 텐디체네 소마 깨통데네 단다 겨부데게 구그틸라 네 로모아 방고지요레스 방고지요레스 네 겨부데게 로모아데게네 다자 톰발라소바 코소노레야 배반 통그래 돈데네 고지스예로 시버지니까 겨부도 배야포레 선에 소나 쳔버라 다자 톰바도 네 소냐 비트리스네 배야포레 네 수크파 코솔리지스예로 가 시버지잖아 고르모라 자레스 마음바네 나텐디 차선네 고솔 소냐 배도 네 텐디 제다지요 쇼자네 고르모라 야보시 자그래 텐디체네 타에 고조 다자 탐발라스파 페네네 질라 추사라 에네네 질라 추사테 모아체아요 에사라 모아체테네 나게요타네 모아체테네 젬비 다보네 저부 나소바케네 페네 모아체아요 에사라 네 다자 탐바게테 모아체아요 마레스 모아체테네 구구틸라 방고초라 틱 메일 존에 네 모아체그레라 모아체
Honging wache kare.
다자 톰바케네 모아체테네 모네나 드리교부 젠다레 네 콜라테니 찬조노로시 티니제고라 네 다자 톰바게 티시요 마레 네 카르체네 마기 방고 노모아체라 티밀 도네네 거기서나 야부 사서 전에네 뭐지.
Digyabagi tabla di kong di big
저거 그
sagi.
메디 말로네. 네. 아니 뭐 좀만 더 봐서네. 가르쳐야 나한테.
So as all of the so the king invited the Buddha and all of his retinue to come to the I don't know what would be the palace, I suppose, and to eat there. And so all this retinue was going by, and there was a beggar on the side of the road that saw this happening. And so as the beggar, of course, had no money or anything to offer them, but as he saw the Buddha and all of his attendants and all of his retinue going to receive this food, the beggar really from the bottom of his heart rejoiced in the merit for the king, right? How wonderful it is that this king is going to offer this food to the Buddha and his retinue. And so really made a really sincere rejoicing for this merit. And so then, the Buddha and all of the attendants, they went and they offered food. And then at the end of it, the Buddha went to what was it, Ngowa? What is Ngowa in English?
몰라죠. 리페.
No,
몰라.
Jason.
몰라면
What do we do at the end of what do we do at the end of things? We not rejoice. We no, I can't believe I forgot the English. Just a second, I'll look it up. No. Just dedicate. We dedicate the merits. So at the end, so the Buddha went to dedicate the merit. And so after, the king had offered them all of this food and all of these attendants and everything. And so then he went to go dedicate the merit. And so the king, so the Buddha, instead of saying the king's name, dedicated the merit of this beggar, right? And so everyone's like, what? Why are you doing that?
님이 속을 뽑아서 젠다는 저거래.
Mm.
네, 뭐가 가르치는 말기. 방고셔라 대체해서 뽑아서.
Yeah, so the person who offered all this food, the host was this king. So why are we dedicating the merit of this beggar?
네, 다자 돈발해야지. 다자 돈발. 네. 그 로모아데기 개노 좀보. 사 좀만고는 이제 대추지 만드는 거를 마음방아 텔레체는 피기에 산에는 살로케노 소마시요레스 네 조부간에 jel아젠다테네 소나타 텔리요레스 이나요 군직대 추지군에네 네 대리가 디스시버지 제게네 칼라제가 직대 추지고 디슨데야요서 아니 코니근네 게사치전도 파요치셔잖아 아니 거기도 체계레스.
So that the Buddha, right, when he went to make this dedication, he dedicated the merit of the beggar, and everyone's like, wait, so this king was the king was the benefactor, was the host here. Why are you dedicating that? And the Buddha says, well, this beggar made this incredibly sincere he rejoiced incredibly sincerely and did it free of really any sort of worldly desires, made a very pure, sincere rejoicing in this merit. Whereas the king, of course, the king did generate merit through this gift, but his gift was also mixed with these worldly desires, like these worldly concerns, right? Oh, look how wonderful I am. I've given all this food, right? So although the king did get some merit, did generate merit, it wasn't as much, right? That really this pure dedication of this beggar was really wonderful.
근데 있었어. 아니 가서 살루톤에 뭐하지 아니 지마 피게야네 젠고 페알레 지시에런체 텐디체나 네 게아치 무사요.
So therefore, it's just to illustrate this idea that if we do this through thinking, if we make these sort of dedications and rejoicing through thinking, and we do it with a pure mind, you really can generate a lot of merit, a lot of positive force in your mind.
대신에 다 아서 프로젝트는 니바 수단지 프로젝트.
So yeah, among the six perfections, right? So the first is generosity, and so the second one is the ethical discipline. So
네, 수단지 프로젝트는 사제잖아. 응안도라. 수단지 뭐 대감발한 주비타 수단지라도 요아 다티 인식을 넣었어.
Especially I was getting lazy, didn't want to read the list. I'll read the list, you guys. So 151 in the English, the training of perfection of ethical discipline in the so then we have the vision, of course, right? The nature of ethical discipline, the method of cultivation, the types of ethical discipline, how to practice when accomplishing them, in the summary of the points.
네, 다 초차잖아 가르자게 요라잖아. 초차잖아 당아서 키질레 킬레지 제거라. 짐바사나 가르 킬렌드 제나네 킬레드 제네 킬레제 노제 티 야부소아 킬레노제 제아지오라. 텔라 초차 야부소스. 베나 겔 킬렌제아죠. 베나 겔로이나 Gelogu
Lombo de
damba
de
kelen,
que.
ne gelogu damba kelen no je, ti yabu songa jiora. O ti sul tem lan,
Ya pasó ya aquí kilante.
sul zan sarji,
Mm.
sarji yabu.
Mm.
Ne chen zan ta ko ma kelen jiora.
Mm.
O ti songa ti.
Ya pasó ya aquí
Yabu
kilan bedu.
songa, yabu songa kelen. Chito
Uh,
kutan.
so to just what is this ethical discipline? So what we can think about it is it's essentially like making a commitment to do good, right? So when you talk about the monks, of course, what they do this through these vows. They take all of these vows, right? And they very sincerely, but it's not necessarily just that. It's also anyone making a commitment to do good, like sort of the Kaylin, it's like promise or commitment, right? So it's like you've really committed yourself. You've promised that you're going to dedicate yourself to doing good.
Penata, Jerka Susan Ramandala, ne
Mm.
Chanchi Ores, Jerka Suzuki Chant Yabukana, ne Suzuki Niba Sagumara,
Ne ba sayın var.
Niba Sama. Tenojane, ta Gelon Gates or Aneta, Nonchunala, certain Suzuki Kilan, Yabusona, and the Niba Diba Sagumare, Chantongagumare, the Yabusonala, and it that's Sutrazatene,
Yeah.
Sinimashan.
So it's you can think about it like in different countries, there's different laws, right? And if you're in a country and you're very careful and you abide by the laws, right, you don't get you're not going to break any laws, right? You probably won't get in trouble or cause problems. In that same way, for us, like for monks and nuns, right, you have the vows, right? And so if you take all of these vows and you keep all of these vows, or as a layperson, if you just sort of assert like you really promise to do good, then you don't accumulate misdeeds, you don't do bad things.
네, 제가 노바지도 치발이
Mm,
이철로서 바나타 제가 아주 초조선 갈 고라잖아 아니 제가 노바지야케네 산루디 촌네메바
mm,
산루 사니네 마차티 메바 존에
mm,
제가 펜토베 산루
mm,
오타테 소치야지 아니 타기샤네 이철로 바잖아
mm,
페나 제가 노바지야케 산루지 계소나
mm,
네 따틴 드그마레 네 제가
mm,
노바치네 드그마레 제네 산루 토네 티 산루고 도초 친절로 제가
mm,
노바 마치야 산루 지요라
mm,
켈나 코타 텐디식라 그래서
mm. So here we could say that what is the where do we go? Sorry. The nature of ethical discipline, right? So ethical discipline, right, is essentially this mind that you really choose not to harm sentient beings. You dedicate yourself not to harm sentient beings, and you do this for, from the root of that, right? And so then if your mind, right, if you do develop some sort of wrong thought, maybe that comes, you get anger or something that harms sentient beings, you catch it and you recognize it and you really try to develop the opposite of that. So the definition, or not the definition, it's sort of no, it's like nature. It's like what is ethical discipline? So the perfection of ethical discipline is the mind that wishes not to harm others and abandons the basis of harming others. So really the core here is that you're really abandoning this mind of actively negating a mind that wishes to harm others in any way.
아니 저도 수차 린다마다 몸보 요데
Mm.
강도 수샤테 가서
Mm.
수차잔 송고아테 수타리데
So that
수타바
so
수타바
mm.
수타바 덴자지와
So that we get done.
네
Mm.
어디
The zoom de constituere.
아
So chum ki yewa de karede. So tabe ki dum.
강도 수차 송자
Oh.
수차 수샤데 카르잔
Mm.
네 수타리덴자네
Mm.
겐로 파마니
Mm.
게사 파마니 네 게nye 파마니
Mm.
게라마자네 된요아
Dun yere.
소 띠온데 치니
Mm.
시그레스
So when we talk about the ethical discipline, what we talk about is the seven types of vows. What are the seven types of vows? Let's see. That's you have the two vowels of do you know the list? The two vowels of the Getsul, sotar, what is it? Sotar donni,
수타리덴
Ridin,
라그레사리 리덴
sotar
리데zen 치마
rigdun. Let's see if we can get. Okay, sotar rigdun gele ditin bani davarele sotar dinada pentogi mare.
수타리덴 라그레사리
Di,
음
di.
라그레사리
Well, it's okay, anyway, so I'm sorry. It's the seven types of vows that monastics take. The Migyamare, the Tama, the Sotarikton, Tama, the
미자요.
yeah, the Tamala, the Migyayare.
요다.
So it's the seven types of individual liberation vows. I think you have, let's see, you have the two types for monks, two types for nuns, young and
게서 게로.
Getu Gelong,
네 게녜도 게녜마
the
미자라.
Migyate.
네 게라마.
Uh,
동부 게차 파마니즈는 게차 때라네
uh,
아니도 잡아니. 네
uh,
게론 때라 아니도 잡아니.
that it is the
기지사서.
Geshe, it
네 참발라네
is.
참바푸도 참바무니. 참바푸잖아 게론 게 맞다 게녜파도 게녜마잖아.
Oh,
베나
the big
붕물레
moon right. Okay, so yeah, so you basically have for monks and nuns, you have the fully ordained monks and nuns. You have the monks and nuns that have not been quite fully ordained. I forget the actual names in Sanskrit or the Pali that we use. And then you have the individual lay preparation vows for lay practitioners, and then you have sort of a preparatory vows for monks and nuns.
네 타마티 게라마.
Gilama.
게라마잖아. 아니 참바 마이 네 기차 마드비 나루라 네 따치셔라.
Okay.
어때 수티 온데
Yeah.
셰그레스.
So it's the seven types of individual liberation vows. I'm sorry, I should know this list, and I don't. I will put this in the chat later when I get it figured out completely.
아니 단데 티 종가도 소망이나 고타 추타 티살로토나 당아서 먹게야 주폰 게야 주점비 추라지 살로치 돈라 어디 돈안 되게레스. 티
So other than that, other than the seven types of individual liberation vows that monks, nuns, and lay practitioners take, you also can think simply about avoiding the 10 types of non-virtue and adopting the 10 types of virtue, right? That's another way to understand this practice of ethical discipline.
아니 다티 추타도 야부소나 가리요레제나 네 신델라네 수술 강아 메바토네 뇨모초아 ane jelo noba chemo kwa jelo pentoa ane keskia chama kilenke jena ne kya chama dindru kya to ne montane tiabu shija so ne yare ya sanji ji kompota wala tim tundo ma moje no business.
Yeah, so then why do we need ethical discipline, right? So if you have ethical discipline in this life, you'll have fewer problems in this life, you'll develop fewer afflictions, which means, you won't harm as many people, you'll be of benefit to people. And so things in this life will be easier for you and it'll be easier to practice. And then if you think about in the next life, then you'll have a good rebirth, you'll have good conditions to continue practicing the Dharma. And so it really becomes this foundation for your practice over lifetimes, right? Because you cultivate good conditions to be a benefit and to avoid developing a lot of afflictions.
ane ta zamba tsutra korotela yena yonjo som nikyo dambi tsutra gewa chudu bi tsutra sanche tonje bi tsutra zane tsutra tala som.
And so then if we think about the types of ethical discipline, we can say that there's three. There's the ethical discipline of restraint, the ethical discipline of accumulating virtue, and the ethical discipline of working for the welfare of sentient beings.
네 다 nikyo dambi tsutra lana karara zane pana ane suzuke niba kasa sasona ane tilan gyopa kye ane jimane tiri chegme ane jimane tiri sachora pana lal doshe cha pana kuma jasa bi kelon ra tiri che lesan o ngandriga mare kuma jandriga mare nganda baji atsuto sonkura ze o tatiso suzuke nantri sho atiso len gyopa ki nantri sho ma chi chiora o te tele nikyo dambi tsutra.
And so this ethical discipline of restraint, right? The essence of this really is that if we do something wrong, we have to really generate regret, confess it, and really make this determination that we won't do it again, right? So if you like stole something or something like that, you have to really think, oh no, this was really bad. I can't do this. I regret this. Remember, regret in Buddhism has a different sense than normal. It's not like self-harming. Geshe didn't say that, but I think it's an important point to remember is that regret, when we talk about Buddhism, it's simply acknowledging that what you did was wrong and then saying, I'm not going to do it again, right? You're not going to do this in the future.
네 다 nikyo dambi tsutra yananda ta tiriti nga so jetone ne hachu keshimboresa pena tsutra saloma jikta lika karan chena ane suzuku nanchu chi khasona ne nanchu yamba haku ane tilisa langno dochi chena ane pento chimbo yuwa tindira mato ne suzu nanchu shaki tanda muntu ne nanchu shaki chena ane pape chunjik teni kala chukisho ane tsucho so ane giwa char su ma chena tiso shia chira mena jikta bi chawa yena yo ne jela kontrol za no pa chi tindi chen ane tatin suzuku nanchu yamba haku na ne muntu ne no pa chi ya to ne jela no tindi chen mara te hamaku na ne peta ne polo chimbo su
So if we think about this ethical discipline of restraint, in the way Geshe was explaining it, it's not so much restraint, is it's actually just like recognizing that we've messed up and saying we're not going to do it again, right? And so, I mean, also restraining from it in the future, but really it's recognizing a mistake. So even in like worldly, our normal lives, right? It's really jobs or whatever. It's really important that if we make a mistake that we just recognize the mistake and we don't do it again in the future. If you don't do that, right, even just in normal work, and you make a mistake and then you just keep making mistakes and you never correct yourself, right, that doesn't ever really go well. So in this same way, right, if we're sort of in our normal lives and we're just continue getting angry or jealous or whatever, right, and we don't recognize those as being problematic and we don't resolve to not do them, then it just creates more and more problems for ourselves. So it's really this essence of this in a very simple way of just recognizing mistakes, recognizing that things are wrong, and making this effort, this resolve to change, to stop it.
pena tanga so control ra chi zana ne control teni nancho yamba suzu control za nancho yamba ta haku guat kechimboras pena nganda bu chi kolo control zana ne nancho kolo yonanda ngala yonanda tombo control za gyuche chora ko tanga control za ki ngi nancho ras kara zane nga control za chinche ne ngaro li to sa nikala ne ma dia cha tila tene ne nga montone control za son ane kolo noba kia to tende keno negres. Noba kieso na, ane kolo no, kasi nga telo noba kia mato na, ane kolo kontro sana, kongal sa noba kia. Kasi nga kolo noba kia to chi nipa meba zo, ane janjeni kia, ane kasi nga tauso na, ane kolo noba kia rade, di tsetse nga noba chawna drogo ato, ane pena.
So if we take, for example, the like anger, right? So anger is something that it's important to recognize that it's a problem, right? If we don't recognize anger as a problem, then we keep doing it. So, right, with anger, right, if I generate anger, regardless of, like, for example, if I get angry with Jennifer, regardless of whose fault it is, whatever happens, if I get angry or whose fault I think it is, if I get angry, it's going to harm both my mind and my body. And then, if I get angry, then maybe I make her angry, and then it harms her as well. So there's no benefit to anger. Can I get the
tamati pena naso kontro zane jelo noba kia chora pena ngani jante jana persi nga jiton don rabu jiga cholo tene ne nga tauso na nga le kiso kayo mares ane kasi kyo me kono lo tindi chana ne nga kyo kimba jane cholo me yete kasi chamno doso na ne tsen kono mato kashi ta kontro za kol tiki chiyo minda kashi jana ne nga tauso sa banjo kenlo chilere tene dongo ma tau yo mares ko me kono lo na me ju chia to tsoma nga che gora ne timena so shosona ko nga tsen kontro nga so ji o ta tindi kontro tila ane jakata to ane mata za kesha shesa chone yo kontro za che ne susu kyo ra ra
So when we think about anger, right, it's often like, say, for example, if I got angry with Geshe and I like stabbed him or shot him, and I hurt him, right? Well, if he goes, and I think, oh, I got him, right? I won here. I beat him somehow, right? But the truth is, right, nobody's winning here, right? He's going to go to the hospital. I'll probably have to pay his hospital bills. I'll probably go to jail, right? Like, so the important thing, right, is that part of our mind when we get angry, like we argue, we think, oh, we're going to win, right? But with anger, no one actually wins. There's never actually any winning with anger, right? It's just all bad. We're always hurting each other.
tende so nga so kontro de za ala kapte don le che kontro maza che mato na kontro za tserte ane o susu controllata non c'era ne ta che giù ma so stanno
Mm.
ne saluti io che to sona
Mm.
ne jima controlla nyori ndo
Mm.
dipendo io res
Mm. Right. So, I mean, it's if ideally, right, if we can avoid anger, that's really great. But sometimes, of course, anger will arise, right? So the important thing is when anger arises is just to recognize it as being harmful and bad and understand, oh, hey, anger has arisen. This isn't helpful to anyone. This is really bad. Understanding why it's bad. And if you just remind yourself of that a lot of times, then sort of naturally the anger, you'll get angry less and less because you'll recognize that it isn't helpful.
근데 니초 답이 추차자텔란 가서 추케네 말에
Mm.
게샤마르티 니초 답atelane
Mm.
수도가네
Yeah,
제아몽부치 추케네나
mm,
말레나네 수도가 처먹가
yeah.
샤테 몽부치 요레스
Mm. Right. So this ethical dissonance of restraint really, this applies to anyone. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Buddhism in a particular way, right? Just anyone it's important to recognize if you're harming someone, that's a mistake, or just to recognize your mistakes in general and just try to fix them. Try not to continue to make the same mistakes.
네 게와 추드비 추타자나
Mm.
아네 다 수수가네 게와 몽부치아타네
Mm.
비찰로나다네 다
Mm.
손제가 소라제나모도 다테소 몽보로네네 게와 몽부치에자
Mm.
킬레아지오라
Mm.
어 다틴다버시레스 페나 제소 퍼체트 라소 바냐레
Mm.
제게 제네네
Mm.
몬테네 냐레
Yeah.
챤네네 추라소아테
So this next one, the ethical discipline of accumulating virtue, right? So this is really doing anything that's virtuous, particularly when we talk about like practicing generosity or reading these great texts or going to teachings, right? Any of these things, or in this case, maybe practicing the virtues of the six perfections. So it's the sense of engaging in any of these virtuous actions, particularly with related to the Buddhist teachings.
아네 신체 돈제지 추라스
Mm.
삼바데
So the third one, right? So we have the three here. The third one is the ethical discipline of working for the welfare of sentient beings.
아니 신체 돈제지 추라자나 아네 다 이제 신체도 솔라네 냥타도 다도 솔라네 로바체트레스
Mm.
데 로바텔라네 추시네 로바체나다 아네 레칼레로체네
Mm.
로바체나다 벤조고네 로바
Mm.
콘타 로바 카르체나
Yeah.
온타테
Uh,
켈로 좀부체
uh,
이제 니지티에네 이제 강화요 사텔라네 가 로바체게 자
uh.
켈로지오라 어티키빈고네네
Mm.
티치아트레스
So this third one really is like really any kind of help to sentient beings, right? So you're having a good attitude, a good motivation in helping the sentient beings that are desperate or that need help, right? So, it could be giving them money, it could be giving them work, it could be helping them, teaching them the Dharma, really, sort of anything you do with a proper good motivation to help sentient beings, to help other sentient beings that are in need of help, right? That's what this is talking about.
ane ta ti sangan drashe ngone ti ne ta tino ma shegdo
Mm.
ane tombo damba sutrana suta damba temba ane ta tera da nicho dambi sutra za chiwa te
Mm.
su kar zen suta ji damba
So take it down.
suta damba jeja chene suta ji damba ton ne suta ki damba ton tembi ne leka cha la
Mm.
o te la res
Kare, tikam. Tangbo beti tu chunkin.
동부 때 동비 추tra자데 니죠 동비 추tra라라 다 동부 담바 추tra나스 수다지 담바 모도자네 다그 수다지 담바리 대셔서 어때도네 때도 드라이빙고네 추tra서 하테레스
동be tu chung tang.
음
Sumba te tu chunki iyo dom.
다그 셴바
Mm.
가서 나니 추tra데 라선
Mm.
니죠 동비 센터 게와
Yeah.
추데지
Yeah.
어때 다기가 팀 지자마체네 제동게 지셔라
Mm.
거절 드셔지자래
Mm.
네, 다 정근올라네 틴도 디시엔도 네 니초 담비 수타자나 카르라자나
Mm.
수타지 담바 모도 수타지 담바 리덴도
Mm.
티도네 티돈 자와 티도 찬자와라 소발라 그래서
Tishin chata rao soba.
음
Ilinga so ti kawayere, ti nanga ti kawayere. Konda.
삼바 수타 이와나 삼테스
Mm. So chunki iyo te sundis. Ti rebe?
음
Sumbate shipate te tetake jita chupani.
음.
어디 인치게 나가 디스 된적이
디콘 탄다 콘이 야르시. 봐줘.
니바데 수mbate 수mbate
음.
벽에 치나바네. 숨진나바 준지. 숨바 초점기 예와니 숨바데 때 동가 초점.
음.
당. So kengi digon kengi digon
동보
lever. 당보디.
담비 추트라는 전에 니티라 니초 담비 추트라.
아, 오케이.
니초 담비 추트라 가르라즈는 수수타 담바타게 데 셰서.
응.
데이터스 안에 데이터 찬타왕군에 손샤 손아지요라.
Okay. So kengi
어때레스.
양을 sungi.
응.
So when we look at the ethical discipline of restraint, right? So what we're talking about here in the ethical discipline of restraint, just to sort of sum this up, is really what we're talking about is these sort of 7 types of individual liberation vows, and then any kind of action that is sort of in accordance with that.
안에 개와 추드 니바친도
네네.
개와 추드 지스타는
응,
친들라서 개와라면에
응,
안에 수수그 개와사
응,
제소파체텔라 텐데 개와
응.
수수jel라 개와 마치파 개와 제치 그래서 개와 제
Okay.
차나 팀냐파네
응.
요니요 컴포토한테
So then the second one, the ethical discipline of accumulating virtue, right? One of the points is really any kind of virtue that we accomplish. We want to, if we want to sort of cultivate virtue that has not been accomplished or that has not been cultivated, and then any virtue that we have cultivated, we want to sustain and increase.
네 삼바도 선제 toncheji
Mm,
자테네 이 선제 넘버 지치게 돈라 메네스
mm,
네 다시 선제 냥토아트소나 메네네
mm,
로바체 타기시아죠 티
mm,
다 선제 넘버 지치제
mm,
선제 넘버 지치티
Ngetti, ngumati, sepayanti,
음
hinchiki nangwaya.
안도
Yeah.
인지요나 티 선제 넘버 지치티라
Uh,
메네네
uh,
단당아서 니지티아 도로바체
uh,
고사죠라 이
okay.
선제 넘버 지치
So then the third one here in terms of what do we say? In terms of working for the benefit of all sentient beings, you have this really it's anybody in need working for their benefit. Here we were talking about these 11 types of beings, and I put this in the chat here, the 11 types of beings.
I'm looking at the chat. Wait, don't say it now.
Sure, I can read it for you, but we can get you in the chat. So the 11 types of living beings, it's not super important, but there's this list here. Those who need help, those who are confused, those who have given help, those who are afflicted by fear, those who are afflicted with sorrow, those poor in goods, those who want a dwelling, those who want mental harmony, those who will proceed correctly, those who proceed wrongly, and those who need to be disciplined by supernormal powers. So it's just a list of, I guess, different types of beings that need help. But basically it means anyone that's in need, right? You work for their welfare.
어때 선체 넘버 지치티 카르 두디지노네 소네네
Mm,
선체 그 tonche 고라잔 두디지요
mm.
두디지 노노소
Good, good.
두디지
Dodekin.
두디
Dodekin. Oh, okay.
두디지가 노라네티
Mm,
몽보셰 선체
mm,
넘버 지친군네
mm,
이제는 펜토그레자네
mm.
다 펜토사티 선체 넘버 지치티 단다 총가자죠
Good.
어때 소나 문네네 로바체고레자
Mm.
어때
So this list is from Dodekin, the ornament of clear Ngundokin.
무토지 말은 두디지
Dodekin. So this list is from one of the main
야 진짜 잠방 공부 소리
just Chamakumbo
음,
Maitreya
음.
the Papatomegi 기전.
진짜 장방 공부관에
Papatomegi the 정발을 말해.
말에 진짜 장방 공부관에 단다 장수 대nga잖아 가 제니는 도디 제다
Dodekin.
능원도 제
Ngundokin,
음,
Dodekin. So it's from one of the Maitreya texts. Dodekin, what would we call that? Maitreya is ornament for the Great Vehicle Sutra. So that list of the 11 types of beings is from this Maitreya, one of the main Maitreya texts, ornament for the Great Vehicle Sutra is the Dodekin. And it's essentially just a list of sort of types of beings that we help.
대체 삼천나마 주시더라서 응?
메콩하다.
다른 뜻이 네 삼바천에 제바 네 쳇다 다네 간디도고라잖아 담바 트도 퍼체 트도 더바테스 그런 수트라는 내제라 Sra jimba mano. Ane ta pana tamba tri to ane jeso phashe tri zena ane phashe tri la jane ane susuk sanglo yapu tone.
mm,
Tela tene susuk sutra yapu nyaus len.
mm,
Susuk len no je ane jen la pa sutra to song she ane song cha to so kandri reze. Tene ngote che.
mm.
Tene che ba la tene ane jen la tento dra. Ta
Jimbade, jimbaki
jimba
bane.
zena. Teres.
So when we talk about here, how to accomplish the them, how to accomplish, and I think here it says how to accomplish them. What would be them in that case? The the theta jita dupa ni injige nanga this kinsapo yure. Shiba theta digasuti theta ditanaka yure. Theta jita dupa ni.
Jiba tita chita se tita zena ane konla ane
Watching chu.
parche tre la so bata ta konla shea chi ora
Mm,
konla ane tsuta sona kanti songo ra za shea
mm,
chi bata tita se
mm.
tizo se ndu din ni
Tutum
shena
sum, tutum sum.
tsuta son tong mombo she so o ni
Okay.
kyo dabi tsuta gaya chi o tiso san ndu din ni shena
Okay.
ze
Ite injige nanga di tana di sebo mando.
음,
So here in English, when it says how to accomplish them, what it means is how to accomplish this three types of ethical discipline. And so here you basically accomplish the three types of ethical discipline, and you think about it in terms of what we call the six excellences and the six perfections. And again, I put the six excellences in the chat. We talked about it before. I'll read them for you if you want. But in just a second, let me finish the Geshe thought before I forget. So, like if we think about marrying the generosity of ethical discipline, because you can take all of the six perfections and kind of join them with each other. And so the generosity of ethical discipline would be if you have really understood and internalized ethical discipline and really are someone who really, has a strong foundation in ethical discipline, then you can actually share that with others and help others understand that. And so that would be the generosity of ethical discipline. The six excellences. The six excellences, I looked this up earlier. I think maybe the Lamrim Chimo, there's two different versions of it that were a little hard to actually see them the same, but it's a little bit long. The six supremacies, it says in the Lamrim Chimo, the supreme basis means that you practice generosity based on the spirit of enlightenment or bodhicitta. The supreme things, which is a strange English translation, but I don't know what else, means that in general you give all objects that can be given. The supreme aim is when you give things away to all living beings for the sake of their immediate happiness and ultimate benefit. The supreme skill and means is said to be when generosity is imbued with non-conceptual sublime wisdom. And supreme dedication means that you dedicate the virtue from generosity to complete enlightenment. And supreme purity is when you stop both the afflictive and cognitive obscurations. So these are sort of qualities or actions that sort of qualities that you should conjoin with when you practice the six perfections.
어째 ane ta ngapa te ton te ta ke ton te azane ton tu azane ta jida ane su karshe ge yore zana ane ta nga so tsutra swala ane chonshi sabaya na chonshi saba koruk chonshi saba damba jena ane tela kela cha damba so achira ane gecha na gecha ane gelon ane genye to genye pamala so ba suzuka ane kare kela damba chiyo na ate to ane chambala son mage chapon ke tsura zane ne mage chapon la so ba tsura khenle na o ta te la so ba ne susu kare de khenle yo na te su khenle ate ya pu so ate ke chambora te ya pu to so na ane susu lu pento chimbo tsinde chi tsoma lu pento ane da ka se so ji ta te ramba yen rugwala ane tsura te ane jima ta jima tsitra za ta nga so gecherlo ton tatso damba khilen ke chena sutra tene sata bo yela karara zana ngaso
Oh, okay, okay,
jitan
okay,
so
okay,
lo
okay. Ah, okay,
jimasta
okay.
tu sala me go
Editing.
otin ra ke chimbo je zana
Editing.
pati judene shere to
Okay. So just this, we're down here in the summary of the points here. So just to summarize very succinctly, what is this ethical discipline, right? So whatever kind of vow or commitment you've made, right? So if you're a bodhisattva, you'll have the three types of vows, right? if you've taken one of the seven types of individual liberation vows, or if you're a monastic, you've taken, the vows related to that, or if you're a layperson and you're simply just you're simply sort of making the commitment not to engage in any of the 10 non-virtues, really whatever kind of these commitments to virtue and to avoid negative wrongdoing that you've made, that you keep these well. And the it's really important because this is like the foundation for you in this life and in future lives to be able to continue to develop virtue. So it's like a farmer, right, creating a good ground to plant the seed in, right? If you don't do that, then it doesn't do you any good. So yeah, so that's why this is really important, and that's sort of generally understanding what ethical discipline is.
근데 다네 추자데 셰차레 아니
음.
zanka jimala 아니 zo바시아이스 네 단다 거마 주 젤라네 티와테 정두이스.
So that's the practice of ethical discipline. Next time we'll talk about the practice of patience. We have about 10 minutes for question and answer. If anybody has questions, it can be on this topic or really anything. Any questions? Anybody online have questions? You have a question? Sure, you have a question. No?
I was just reflecting on the last thing you said about the soil. You want to perpetuate good deed. You have to have good soil, but sometimes you have also to start by bad soil to understand what is a good soil. So you learn how to treat your soil properly, and then you can generate good things because you have enough to don't get anything in the end.
So sometimes you have to have experience with bad soil to know what good soil is.
Sometimes when you do not have this spontaneous virtue to have this good seed in you. Sometimes you learn with experience, right?
So you have to recognize,
You have to, exactly. You have to become aware of what you are doing. You have to acknowledge it if you're willing to, right?
Yeah.
So I was just reflecting on that.
당볼라디 문진 제거래. nga mutuni nor tu shorna di yabo yomare. Jela gala di gyoro jo tu pyure. Tangbola di ngunzin nga so di nor tu di ngunzin 제거래. kongi di tsungsung di tioyo. Anybody?
Yeah, when you practice, right? And then if you take vow, when we practice the ethical discipline, and do we necessarily need to take the vow? Why? First question. And then the second, why? I know that if you take the vow, then you can accumulate more memories. Yeah. But if you violate, you also accumulate bad. Yeah.
Doubling down on your bet.
Right. So, and then my second question is.
Right, let's do one at a time. Okay. I'll forget. the 조충 냠는 체나 the 민직 domba killing goreves. Yang the karichene the domba shuna the gewa mangwasakiris.
다 추tra 소자데 제동아서 추tra자데네 몸보지 킬레제 네 킬레제한테 송아텔라 나한테 요래 베나 게론다부제나 게론간에 찬지장아 사사자네 킬레라 킬레네 티송 티야부 송소나 아니 게와데 시체임바 아니 티 케말레소나 킬레네네 티 킬레디 쇼자나 네 디바요레자테 팅아서 몸보송데라 몸보셰데
인지미지 키는 거리베스
추tra자데 제도 킬레지 고레스
고그레스
네 킬레노 쟁아 제게이즈네
맞지
대치
domba슈
dom바슈
네 인지미지 domba슈 거레베 어디
dom바슈 단다 컨데 지자체나 고레스
공기 튀어 디 nganang신 nga 디 거를 디 개와 미 개와주 책임은 이네 너희들이 동바 슈메 nga 디 소춤 냠는 책이에베
ताते खेला जान दम्बाजी जान जेम्बासाने खेलने को आयो मारे सुसुसु खेला नेगा गेवाच
okay
सोंगिया मगेयाच पोंगिया जान
so
सुसु खेला
make
चेरा
it choka
तेंदे चगो मारेस सुसु साउंड तांजा
uh,
खेला
so you have to make a commitment to yourself at least, right? You don't have to go through like taking vows and a ceremony or anything, but you do, I think it's like saying, I will not do this, even if it's to yourself, but you don't have to take like vows, like monk vows, right, or something, right? You don't have to take like official vows for it to be ethical discipline, but you have to make a commitment that you will not do wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
페나 가서 디랭아 셀라 코노 코라 쥐자비스 코라초 아니 야마 마자소는 칼라 자그메 수수 킬렌스 체그라 아니 틸라 테네 아니 코라 쥐자지오라 어 틴다고 싶다 나 타기 킬레 차야는 돈 코라 쥐마잔 디그마르 수수수 뽕부존데 수수 킬라지오라
Yeah.
대운드게라스
So like for example, like oh today I'm gonna do 10 quarters around the Tsuklokan, right? And I'm not gonna eat until I do that, right? You're just making some commitment and you're following through on it to do virtue, right? That's the important thing is that it doesn't have to be, something
아니
fancy.
데도 전시사바 담바이나네 단다 수타 리데자친도 라긴가 데소에노 마젬바사네 담발레 어텐디체그라스
But of course, then we are normally often we're talking about like the Bodhisattva vows or the 7 types of individual liberation vows where you are in the ceremony and you're taking vows from another person. That of course is.
네, 나선도 권산 조사는 손치 이제 라마서 손치 진퇴진 몸부지 그 동분에네 나네 뭐게야지 책매 게야지 더위자는 라마살에 켈레젤리 손치 솔라네 켈레제도 모치셔되게 지게 요레스 몸부지가 다 권산 조라 네 라마 때네 손치 진퇴지라 베나 라마 손다지 때나네 라마 때네 내가 뭐게야지 봉게 게야지 더위자네 다트 켈레도 몸부지 그 책이었어. 나중에 아주 배바자 거를 권산초도 추진게지어라. 아또 요 권산초 특세도 뜻하고도 길래가 말해라. 이제 간도 만들어야 되나. 손추지 개지나 디킬래가 그랬어.
손추지
권산초네 과라도 손추 추지하지나.
That's what they killing.
killing.
Yeah, so also like when like for example when His Holiness is giving teachings and he's teaching about the non-virtues or virtues of these things and we just make a commitment to avoid the 10 non-virtues and things like that, even just making a commitment to ourselves, right? That's a commitment that counts in terms of ethical discipline.
네, 배나 권산초에네 다음에 나타바리 전시 상냐래 제가네 교조 제셔 손으로 내가 주시는 라소스네 지금 내게는 수수 컨택
That's a lot. So like for example when His Holiness says, oh, I practice bodhicitta every day and you guys should too, and we all sit there and we go, yes, of course, yes, we'll do that, right? That's of course a commitment. And I was joking, yeah, it's very easy to say yes. It's harder to actually practice bodhicitta every day. But yeah, so Geshe is making this point that, right, it doesn't have to be these formal ceremonies, any kind of internal commitment that we make, right? And often you get these in these teachings with these great teachers, they're sort of giving you these opportunities to make these commitments. But the karitchinati tinjiki kilena dumbashuna karitchinati mangwagi gewasaki.
There is that ngaso dambaza jora. Dambaza tene chitamaza tayota ke sheton chena. Aso dambaza zuicheres. Zuicheres. Number riche mai business ngaso mentor ka zuicheres. Ti kenle tin lama sanene ti dambatle na ngaso pombol a chautu gres. Pena ngat damba jene ni damba maji ngela nga chance damba jiji nga chance anina nenga damba jene ne chance ala gya chaya. Karazane damba ti damba riche mai be zuichi res. Zuitinga so lipul thau de yores. Thau de yeso sa ani ti latene gya chimbo sa gres.
So in this tradition, we actually talk about these vows as being a subtle form. Actually, when you take the vows, you actually, this like subtle form sort of dissolves into you or covers you. It's this very subtle type of form. And so if you have two people that are doing like prostrations, for example, if one person has taken vows and another person hasn't, on the basis of this very subtle form, because of that vow, you actually accumulate more merit than someone who has not taken vows.
Why is that? Yeah, that is my question. Why?
카르티니티 숙진 대연나
zuchete damba ke zuchete ngas kanin chune legrezen ani tombu damba dacha tomba gelene ne dacha tomba gene namba riche mai be zute ni mamun thuni tanda aso daji parma chepa zando damba ke jute chege yo mares
okay.
dacha tomba ke jubene te ziche mai bati ani dacha tomba ke tombu suzu sangi damba yora ti jubene damba ke ziche mai ba aso ti ne shari pala so ba ne june ma
Like unity.
ma le ne tanda pa na so jule yores na so tanda
because right, so you can think about it as there being this unbroken lineage of this very subtle form going all the way back to the Buddha, right? And so that we have these lineage of these vows, and it's not just these words, it's actually this lineage of this subtle form, right, that's been passed on. And so as long as you're keeping those vows, that lineage is like that subtle form is alive within you. And if you break the vows, of course, you lose it. But right, if you've kept that, if you keep your vows purely, you have this lineage that's going all the way back to the Buddha of this subtle form that is alive inside, or not alive inside you, it's not what Geshe said, but it's there, it's part of your continuum and continuing. And so on the basis of that, you generate more merit. That was a nice explanation. I've never heard that.
pena nga so tanda da ju parma che pa ne damba ke juto por chesona pena nga choro le damba nga damba me sa da ju por cheson rig mara ati june ro ayo mares da cha tomba ne ma tanda pa le ate ati juma chen le ge yo rezen yo ta she ate te res le ja de kar rezen aso uzu de la namba riche be zeto namba riche mai be zu sa ni ne ta namba riche mai be zu za te ne aso june ne ma le ne tindi le ayo so sa gea chimbo to damba za de tindi res
Yeah, so it's because of this lineage, this unbroken lineage from the Buddha, right? And Geshe is using these technical words. I don't know the words in English, but there's this it's basically this very special kind of form. So we think about form as being like sort of these physical things. This is like a very subtle form that is passed down in this unbroken lineage from the Buddha, and that we receive when we take these vows. So like you have to receive it from somebody who has kept these vows and is part of this lineage.
pena nga so pi kare she ge rezen tsamba zara pa tsamba za tsamba jo za ga tsamba ti Mario sachi to mar mesani na ne choko ja che bare tena tsamba ti la Mario na ne toa chen ni ba chen damba mena mar mesa ka tsamba damba yo na ma pe ba ka ana tsa peres na ga pe ba tsamba ma da
This is a very Tibetan example. It's great. Geshe is giving us this example of tsampa. You guys know the roasted barley flour tsampa. Have you ever seen the Tibetans eat this? One of their staple foods is this roasted barley flour. They eat it all the time. It was a very important food for them in Tibet. And so they make it with, so if they make tsampa and they'll make it with like water and yogurt and butter and things into these little balls, and they'll eat it. And so the example here is like if you have two tsampas and you're eating them, and one has butter in it and one doesn't, right? That you can eat them both and they'll both perform the function of tsampa. They'll both sort of fill you up, but the tsampa with the butter is much nicer. Tastier. And so this is the example of like this subtle form. And I was joking with Geshe because I was like, this is a very Tibetan example because it's just such a Tibetan way of thinking. But it makes a lot of sense, right? That's the example of that subtle form is like the butter, right? It just, yeah.
It's very critical.
damba jati ke chimbo res aso chamba ina na chamba korol damba jaya keson suzuke damba cha chimbo ma nipa chimbo jeme na chonjo chamba ke damba je ane to na gesalo ke damba jati ke chimbo res ko khele it's Jena, and it in Montane.
nga dendreki nga namgyung nga di ni shina nuba chegime. Dendrik nga rangi rangla di lapna di suk tramo lapki mare. Digapsuti.
Leg Marala. But Nibaza Pena, ye Juni Chogande, and Jela Nibati, Dombajena, the Legrama. And then as yellow no ba check mess, and then Susu Killen and no ba machacho. That the Cheto Hasa Yabura. Yena Tanda Ziches Dambazati, Ma Juni Legmare. Yena Kuru Killet and do.
Yeah, so you're right. It is very important for this reason. I was just clarifying with Geshe. So if I just say, "Oh, I'm not going to kill," that's really nice and it's important and that's wonderful, but I'm not receiving this blessing, right? So to receive this blessing that you have this unbroken lineage from the Buddha, you have to receive it from someone who's received this same lineage and do it in this vow and this ceremony. And so, yeah, this is why, like the Bodhisattva vows, these monks' vows, this is why these are so precious, right? And why they're so important is because you really are receiving this really wonderful, important lineage of this subtle form that goes all the way back to the Buddha.
And it's cheated Tanda Naso Mugalit, Malit Sa Chambore, Nora, Milit Sa Chambo, Junse cheat Karazen. Ne damba tanchek ten rezen ne aso sutar damba ri dendo o de soma ke jene chogreti
The shimba ke damba te
la to ne lama ye ne tendula so ba dambi ten mare damba ta yo mare aso mid sa chimbo yeso ne damba soma ji chogres ende yeso sa chimbo mi jense chite ti shegres.
So when we talk about being a human being specifically, right, in Buddhism, we talk about there being God, but there are different beings you can be born as. So we talk about being born as a human being, why it's so important. This is one of the reasons is actually it's only being born as a human being that you can take these vows, right? These gods are not a valid basis for taking vows. Of course, animals aren't able to take vows. So being born as a human being, one of the reasons it's so precious is we actually have this ability to take vows.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Thanks for coming.
I think Geshe should give us vows every month.
Nga tsala domba nangre. Domba nang kiri?
Damba no. Agia koga damba je. Ne kone damba no sen.
Bye online guys, thank you.
Thank you. Shall I show my WhatsApp number?
Oh yeah, let me do that real quick. Let me just finish.